Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan from Awoke2Crypto, and this is Harmony Spotlight, where we highlight Harmony community members. And this week we are joined by Patrick from EasyNode. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, how's it going?
This week we want to talk to Patrick. He's done a lot for Harmony. For a guy who doesn't actually work for Harmony, you seem to do a lot in the background. From
quite a bit,
yeah, from building a website to guides and even software for them. So thought this was a great opportunity to kind of get to know what you've been doing in the background and how you've been helping out other validators, everybody else. But before we get to that, I kind of want to get to know you a little bit better. So first of all, what do I call you? Because I've seen you, I've seen you by many names, right? It's Patrick's Omnibots on Discord and Slug'em, I think. And so what's the best way to identify?
Right. Yeah. Just tie everything together, the gaming name and everything. It's Patrick at EasyNode is good. I think sometimes it shows up as either Patrick Mogul or Patrick Slug'em, which is just the backwards version of Mogul. And that comes from being in a band named the Moguls. So yeah, we started out as Slug'em Crypto and we created our validator back in March. And after a few months, converted over to align with the guides and software I was making a little bit better, so it all made more sense.
So I gotta ask, are you still in the Moguls band?
We're still sort of around. We haven't done anything since pre-COVID now, so we're kind of all spread out now and waiting to see what happens to get together and do some stuff. But yeah, we did put out a record during the start of COVID in April of last year, so I have a box of records to get out to people still once the stuff's done. But yeah, we're making progress. We'll see.
Very cool. What kind of music is it?
It's a punk rock band.
Oh, I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Oh, very cool. Well, you're gonna have to put a link or something like that, or at least a taste of it, so people can find it.
Yeah. If you just Google "I hate the Moguls," you'll find us.
Okay. So all right. Google "I hate the Moguls."
Thing everywhere. Yep.
All right. I'm gonna have to put a link to that in this video then. So cool. All right.
We'll get one in there.
All right. I love it. So, all right. Well, a little bit about you. At least we know what to call you now, right? So, so Patrick EasyNode seems to be the easiest. All right. Fair enough. Well, it sounds obviously like you're into computing and computers, stuff like that. I can appreciate that. I'm a guy who, I've been a gaming nerd. I like to say, my whole life building computers, stuff like that. I think you sounds like you've taken it to you're on a much higher level than I am. Do you do that stuff professionally, or is that all just a hobby, or what is that?
Yeah,
my
job is systems administrator for. I work for the government here in Wisconsin, so that's my full-time job, and yeah.
Oh, very cool. I didn't
been into gaming since I was I went to Nintendo Power Fest in '91 as a 12-year-old and made it to the semifinals, and I've been hooked ever since then. So if I can get in any competition, I'm in. So I'm definitely going to play in that thing on Saturday on Friala with the Crypto Royale thing going on.
Oh, so, color me impressed. What you made it to the finals in '91? What games were you playing then?
You played Rad Racer, Mario Brothers, Rad Racer, and then Tetris until the end of your 5-minute timer or whatever it was. So it's that infamous gold cartridge that's out there for Nintendo, where you play the 3 games and they add up your score. That was it. Yep.
That's awesome. It's also cool to find out we're neighbors. I'm in Minnesota, and actually, I'm in Minnesota. Actually,
by Mars.
Yeah, I've talked about several of our 3 of us from Minnesota. We have one of us. We're all friends in this group in our Awoke2Crypto. One of us actually is in Wisconsin, and one of us is actually in Chicago. So you guys have grown up and kind of spread out. Yeah, exactly. Right. This is always what fascinates me the most is what brought you into crypto, right? Like we all have, this is kind of my bread and butter question for everybody is because everybody's so early on to crypto. Yeah. Most of the world's not here yet, so we're all these the early adopters. What brought you as an early adopter?
Right. Well, when I was younger, I was working at a computer company and ended up with a bunch of extra machines in the 2000s. So I ended up getting into like SETI and folding at home. If you're familiar with those, it was just shared computing that they use your computing power to search for extraterrestrial life. And so you could donate your CPU times, which is basically what Bitcoin mining ended up kind of being, is the same thing. Like, now I can make money for them sharing my computer power. Okay. So got into that and doing some stuff with that early on, but I didn't stick with it, unfortunately. And over the years, got in and out of doing different things. Like I ran an ETH rig for a while and then stopped doing that when that didn't get very profitable for a while. And so I've always been involved with it for quite a long time with the shared computing, or just, I don't know. It all kind of ends up in the same bucket of proof of work, proof of stake, but just the method of how it gets done. And started with looking for aliens a long time ago because I had a few extra towers sitting around doing nothing.
That's cool. So for years and years ago. So when did you first dabble, or when did you buy your first cryptocurrency, or mine it, or whatever it might be? Are we talking like 6 months ago or 10 years ago?
Almost 10 years ago.
Oh, good for you. Sure. You are an OG.
I'm sure I've lost Bitcoin. I'm one of those, I had Bitcoin wallets and there's probably coins sitting somewhere. And I was like, there's got to be wallets from me out there somewhere that I probably won't recover at any point, but hey, you never know. So
that's cool. No, I love it. Just a true OG.
Yeah, unfortunately, I didn't really pick any up way back then and hang on to it. But I have stuff from, I have lots of worthless stuff from back then and from the last wave in 2017. And, it's all around. I've got the good stuff now, and we'll see if the good products keep going. So
Sure. That's cool. Very cool. Next thing I want to ask you is, so I see how you got involved with crypto and everything like that. What exactly brought you to Harmony itself? So was that, you've been in crypto, it sounds like, for a decade or anything else.
Right.
Are you involved as nearly as heavily with other projects, or is Harmony kind of your bread and butter? And if so, what is it? Yeah. How did you find Harmony? How did you get so attracted to it? Or what made it Harmony the one?
Right.
No pun intended.
It's a great question. Harmony is the only one I'm really involved with at the moment. I've been working on collecting stuff on other chains to maybe get involved in something, but the entry points on a lot of other things are just insane. So Harmony, I found and started buying Harmony in January. And in early February, when it first shot up, I looked at doing a validator, and I went, I don't know if that would work out, and kind of just joined the community doing blogging and started writing blogs about stuff. And in March, when I looked at it again, and when the price kind of settled a little bit from the first spike, it went, okay, well, I had racked up a decent amount by then, and the entry point's a lot higher, so maybe now there won't be as many people joining as there was when I first looked. So, because at the time there were so many new validators and not many getting elected, because the median to get elected was over 6 million at the time or something like that. It was a lot higher than nowadays. So, if it seems hard to get elected at times here, but it's a lot easier than it used to be. So kind of the motivation came from all that, getting started. And I started off like May 12th or March 12th. And I put 50,000 into my validator myself. And like 2 days after that, I got one of those surprise elections because somebody fell out of election, and there were like 60 keys that were available all of a sudden. So like every validator got elected.
Wow.
And with that, it's pretty interesting because I was the only staker. So I got all of the rewards the validator got for one key. So that's why I at first was going to run for 0% for 3 months when I started, because, I just got enough to cover my everything that I'm going to pay out for the first 3 months. So when I originally started, my motivation was to run just a little above cost, and mostly make my money off of staking with everybody on my servers. So obviously a lot has changed in the landscape since those days, and we have minimum fees and things like that. But we'll see where there's programs that might be able to fix that as well, and make you charge a 5% fee. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So was it with Harmony? Was it just because the low entry point? Was it the technology you liked about them? Was there anything specific? Was there anything specific about the use case, or what they're trying to do? The bridging aspect, or is all the above?
a bit of all of the above. And when I first did my first real foray into altcoins, I ran mining rigs for a coin called Verge a couple of years ago.
Okay.
If you had ever heard of that, and its selling point was it was fast and it was a privacy coin, allegedly, whatever that means in crypto, where it's all in a ledger. But anyways, so it was the fad of 2017 along with Monero and a few other things.
Sure.
Monero survived pretty well. And Verge actually came back recently out of nowhere. So it was up to 4 cents, which is ridiculous because it didn't have that great of a life back then. So, but just seeing how that coin, how the speed of that, and then when I came across Harmony, one day as I had been trolling Binance US for things to buy and see what I could take a shot at that I could actually afford, and started digging into it and going, oh, well, this one that's under a cent is pretty interesting. It could be faster. The transactions do seem to work pretty fast. At the time, there's nothing out, so there's nothing being used on the network. So it was still kind of like, well, when is stuff going to start? And then in March, when Viper came along and the traffic just took off, that's when everything seemed to happen. So
sure. So do you look at things, because I'm always fascinated by I don't have the same skill set as a person like you by any means, where the IT background or the software engineering and everything you do. Are you able to look at things differently when you're looking at Harmony, or are you able to, when you look at a project like Harmony or anything else, do you deep dive, and are you looking at code in any kind of way? This is a shot in the dark. Are you looking at stuff like that, or are you? I mean, I'm not saying necessarily you're rating the code, but are you looking at a different fundamentals? So, like when I look at a project, lots of times I evaluate it from potential use case of adoption and things like that, and that's pretty common, things like that. But we all have different perspectives the way we evaluate a project, and so I'm curious, just based off your background, is there anything do you evaluate projects in a different way just based off of your background, or are there certain like components that you'll look for?
Right. Probably nothing extra technical, just more of how's the community.
Gotcha. Yep.
Is there anything behind it? The use case is obviously the number one thing. And, with Harmony hopefully being the center of every bridge, I think that's the best use case of them all. And so, someday you want to go from Bitcoin to Matic and, it passes through Harmony, great. That actually just in the middle moving all your transactions, which sounds like the best goal.
Yeah, that actually makes me feel better, because then I don't feel like I'm not missing out on a key aspect that I don't understand. Right?
Unfortunately, I don't know Golang very well, so I can't really go into Harmony's code and just be like, this looks like a perfect rebuild of the Ethereum code or whatever it is to,
Gotcha. And that just goes to show you how little I know. Cause I'm just like, it's, I couldn't, I don't know any of the code. So I was just like, I wonder if there's aspects that are just so far over my head that, I'm missing out on key components. And I wonder those questions. It's like, oh man, is there, and so it actually makes you feel, like you said, it makes you feel great that I'm, talking to someone like yourself that, you don't have you don't get to
when I was looking at Harmony back then, I didn't have hardly any of the programming experience I currently have since I started working with this. So I don't even know if at that time I could have looked at much and been like, all right, well, this is what happens compared to now. So
sure. No, that's interesting. So now you say you didn't have hardly the programming experience. Now, did that come from you just diving into? Is that from professionally from you at work, or is that more because you just chose to dive in here and learn everything through the validators, the blockchain, and everything like that?
Right. Kind of a sort of a combo of things, but mostly just on my own, diving in.
Sure.
Well, I loosely know Python, so let me start making tools to help me manage my node a little better. And then it turned into, well, I wrote this whole bash script that just installs everything, but now I can convert that to Python and make it something that installs everything. And so there's a lot of options. And I just don't have the skill to make something like great with websites or things like that, to be like, come in here, put in your IP and your key, and then hit go and pay me 51 and I'll set up your server. Otherwise, I probably would have gone that route in the end and charge for my software. But I took the route of trying to go through getting a grant, which they just stopped doing over the summer, unfortunately. And then you had to go through this bounty program, and that was kind of set up. It's set up in an interesting way where, unfortunately, they force you to keep everything hidden until they say, okay, we'll pay you, post the code, which really stunk because it took them 6 weeks to do that. And I'm like, hey, you guys are really killing validators out here. Nobody knows how long the software will be great for, because when you change things have to get updated and it has to be maintained. And that's still another up in the air question as to who is going to actually do that. And I was like, well, I plan on doing it, but I was hoping I'd get supported to do that. So we'll have to see. So yeah. Either way, I'm still coding. I coded all morning doing stuff to upgrading other things, so it's still coming with upgrades. So
gotcha.
Just hammer through it.
Well, that's fascinating. That leads to some of the other things I want to talk about. So yeah, so you self-taught yourself, or I mean, you dove into it. You wanted to learn it. Well, you had that background. That kind of dives into the website you created, right? So you created a website, easy.node, right? And this is a tool set that up and coming validators or potential validator or potential someone who wants to spin up a validator can go to your website, and they can now follow the step-by-step guide, and it essentially just makes it easier, right?
Pretty much, yeah. That the developers from Harmony, they just released binary files and said go. There isn't really an installer, anything that packages anything. It's a few random pieces you throw on a operating system and say go, and it works, and that's about it. But the guide to get it all done is this giant monster that takes people sometimes weeks to get through the first time, depending on their skill level. And a lot of it you only do once, and it's not very important. So if we can just turbo past that and they can use something a little more pre-built to get them up and running, they can focus on the things that matter, like, building the brand and getting in the community and helping people and getting your name out there. If you don't have that 6 million one laying around yourself to drop into your validator to get a key right away.
Sure. Yeah. And I can say that too, is from an experience that we had our validator go down. And I talked about it in last week's interview for a second. And it's not so much, I don't need to cover that, but we had it go down. Our software engineer who runs our validator, who, he's a pro at that stuff, but he was unavailable to unfortunately, in a family emergency, he was just unavailable for like a week's time. And, it left us in a tight spot where we're like, we should have a backup plan for this, right? And so anyways, the point being is, since then, as a redundancy, I was like, well, I'm a guy who's played video game. I've been a gamer my whole life. That doesn't translate to coding. I get that. But when I say that is like, I started building computers when I was younger because, I'm that kind of gamer, stuff like that. And I've kind of, I started mining cryptocurrency, the same thing, where I just kind of self-teach myself that stuff. Now I don't have a program background. But like, you know what? I'll teach myself this stuff too, as a redundancy, as the backup in that rare situation where something like this ever happens again. Right. And so the first thing I did is like, I've seen that someone else put a tool set out here. So I went right to your site, or I went to EasyNode. Sure. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. Because when I spun up the practice, what I call a practice node, just to try this out.
Yeah.
And reading through Harmony's files, exactly what you're saying, I'm just like, oh my gosh, this stuff's over my head. So it took me a week to figure all this stuff out. But actually, just because I wanted to learn it. But once I did that, and I watched your YouTube video, which I'm going to put a link to in here. Your YouTube video is extremely helpful, makes it a lot easier. But your process makes it so much simpler. But on top of all that, what I like so much better is the interface that it comes up when you get into the node. So like we have ours on DigitalOcean also, right? And like you go into the node in that interface of just, what is it, like nine number keys essentially? It's like
something like that, yeah.
Like press 1, restart, press 2, do this. I'm just like, oh, this is like validator for dummies. That's what I need.
Yeah.
Right?
That was what I was actually building, was that. And I got tired of having a giant list of things to copy and paste and then remember to edit or change depending on if it was main or testnet. And so I just started building that, like a macro set that was a menu there for myself. And all of a sudden I was like, hey, why don't I just set it up? Kept going, and it just kept snowballing. And then, yeah, really it's two different things. And for most people, I think they're just going to use the installer and forget about it. But for the actual validators that are doing things daily, like that's another great benefit. And I know after they gave me the bounty for my installer, they put out bounties to build packages for specific operating systems. And I'm like, well, I do that already because it's the same on all these operating systems. It's just a binary file. So, yep. But they went ahead and put out a bunch more bounties on other things. I'm like, what? Come on and fund me, and I'll just take care of that for everybody. And then they can. So I have it on the list to add a tools only option in the menu to, you start it up the first time on your Windows machine in Windows Subsystem Linux. And you can say, just give me the tools, and they'd all just dump in the right spot, and don't worry about keys or anything. But if you wanted to run commands to change things, then you can import a wallet right on your Windows Mac or whatever you got at home and run your commands from there, because the validators online themselves don't actually have to have wallets even in them. They just need BLS keys and they'll run. So
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah. Like it's what I was like, when I spun one up, I was struggling. Struggling and just teach myself. And what I love about yours is all those commands. It's just like when you're talking about like the updating and things like that, you have a command for updating the CLI and everything else. And I was just, here I am trying to, enter commands for get to the Harmony cookbook to look at different things. And I'm like, and here you have you hit a number key and you're done with it. I'm like, oh gosh, this is so much better. This is so much easier. And I showed it to the guy, our other group member who does do that, and he's like, oh, absolutely, we'll switch to this. He's like, I'll spin up a new node and we'll put this in there. He goes, this seems a lot easier. It's not that he can't do it the other way, but he's like, yeah, this makes it easier. So if I'm unavailable, you can just hop right in and just follow the number keys.
Yeah, no, it's great for people to go through and build it on their own, so they can fix things on their own. Because I always like to say, I'm not around half an hour before or after an epoch. You're on your own. Good luck.
Sure.
And sometime after the epoch, I'll check on people's signing rates. And if I see someone I know who is down, we'll find out what's going on. But
sure.
Otherwise, it's no general help from me outside of that time or in that time frame, because too much to focus on yourself at that point. And I've missed so many epochs just chatting with people about something and then being like, oh my gosh, I totally didn't even see it end. So
you got to do you.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing that's, that's cool about this is you did this essentially out of the goodness of your heart right now, right? Like I get it, you did it. It sounds like you spun this up to for yourself. Essentially you did this to make it easy, but you didn't have to put this out there for everybody. You could have kept this just for yourself and said, I'm just gonna make this easy on myself and keep this to myself. But you put this out publicly to share with everybody.
Yeah, when I built my node and I got done with it and done with the Harmony docs, I went, this will never work for anybody who doesn't have as much technical skill as I have without them having, somebody asking a billion questions in some chat room to get this right, because there's just so much. They give a lot of info. It's good. It's all valid in there. It's just too much info. And a lot of it you don't even need when you're setting up a node. So you run into these huge pages where you got to do like 2 little snippets on a page and then move on. So in March, when I started, I kicked out what's called the classic companion guide nowadays, but the companion guide that I had an intro section that would tell people, if you're going to become a validator, here's what you need to know ahead of time. And then I had a middle section that matched up perfectly with the 4 sections of the validator docs. So you could read my section and get an overview of what you actually needed to know in their guides, because I wasn't about to rewrite their entire thing. So it's kind of just hey, read mine and then do whatever they need to in their guide that I suggest you do. And that's how it originally got posted and started building from there. And then at some point I went, well, maybe I'll write some bash scripts to help me do things easier. And I turned into Python, and then I turned into a Python installer and a Python website that goes with it. So it's Python everywhere for me now at the moment.
Sure. I gotcha. Well, I can tell you, I personally appreciate that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but people can also who end up using this, because first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and recommend, if anybody's watching this or anybody is out there, if you're new, well, 2 things. One, if you're a new validator, go to Patrick's site, easy.node. And if you're thinking about spinning up a node, go use this. It'll make your life that much easier. So that's the first thing. Second thing, also, correct me if I'm wrong, but existing validators, right? You have this set up so existing validators can import this onto their validator and just and use that tool set anyways, just to make their life easier, right?
For the most part, that's good. It works. It just depends on what people have done to get it set up and how much they've strayed from the actual setup path and customized things. But in general, there'll be a day where I think only people have only loaded it from scratch and just used it and everything's great. But for people who have built their own, it should work. And if it doesn't, come on into my Discord chat and someone will get you fixed up or help you get it going, because it's usually just aligning a couple little things and it'll work for anybody who's out there already.
Well, and the reality is too, like, I mean, don't get me wrong. It took me a long time for a guy who's never done any of this stuff. I mean, when I say it took me I was reading about that stuff and then to go through the act of reading the Harmony documents and then I followed your YouTube video, which again, like I said, I'm going to link because it's extremely valuable. People, if anybody's interested, you should watch that. But I did that on a Saturday, spent most of the day screwing around with that, just trying to test stuff like that. But
sure.
If someone's, even if they already have a pre-existing validator, it seems like they could probably, if they wanted that tool set, just spin up, a new one, and just put it on that one. And that would be
or next time you build on a new shard because you're changing shards. Yep.
Sure. Just put it on there.
Go for it then. And
just make your life easier then with a new interface. So,
right. I wouldn't learn it if you have a time crunch, because it is kind of guided and there's some stuff you have to do to get things aligned right. And that's just kind of how it is, because of, if you don't have those kind of guardrails there, you can do things however you want, but good luck supporting it and keeping it going. So is kind of the idea. So almost better to set up a redundant node like that, right? Or maybe not. When I say that, like, if you have that start building your redundant node like that, so that way you're not going to be down when you're screwing around with it. Right. I guess it all comes back to what your skill set is, and if you want to take the time to learn how and where everything is going versus how I set it up and where it ends up. And it's just in my site outlines where everything ends up now, and I'm going to put up a better, more full guide this weekend, I think, that actually individually points out every single file that gets loaded what that does and where it lives, what gets changed in it for people, and just have a giant, like, the anatomy of a validator, I was going to call it, or something like that.
Oh, cool.
Where it'll just everything, because there's a lot of things that people just don't know. And if they knew and they were like, oh, wow, it was really that easy, that might change some other things for them too. So, So
cool.
There's definitely some other easier ways to get your stuff moved over to another server when you create one and things like that. We know all the points that people struggle with things, and usually it's restoring a wallet, making BLS keys, or moving them around. And other than those three things, you can't really get tripped up on much anymore with the toolbox. As long as you get the pre-setup section done right before you hit go and pull down the repo, you should be fine. And the only thing that can go wrong if you restore your wallet during it, fine, is your BLS keys afterwards. So So when people come with another problem, we know something else is wrong first, and we'll figure out what may have been wrong before you tried to run it and get you fixed up.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I think I saw on the site too, if people are using the software, something like that, they can support you. Don't they have links on there if they're because you're putting that out for free and everything,
right?
But there's links too if they want to. Besides, obviously supporting the validator, which is one way to support you. Aren't there links they can Patreon or something they can support if they want?
I have on GitHub. I have sponsors enabled for GitHub sponsors. Okay, so there's you can do one-time shots at me, or there's a monthly subscriber base, and I've got a couple people that luckily support me. So it seems to be working and noticed. So
perfect.
That's out there as another option. Yeah. But of course, as a validator, all of our wallets are always out there. Anytime you want to tip us, just let us know you didn't send it to us by mistake, because that also happens.
Yeah. And then we see those tweets where it's an informational tweet, right? Like someone sent this by mistake. No, I hear you. Mm-hmm. So Perfect. Well, I think it kind of wraps everything up. I just kind of wanted to talk about your guide and get a chance to know you a little bit better. So I want to thank you for joining me today, Patrick. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Where can everybody find you? Where are the best places to find you? So we've got, your website.
EasyNode.one. Yep. EasyNode.one. Everything's linked on there on the main page. So yeah, there's buttons to get to everywhere from there. I do have a Telegram stakers delegators chat for anybody who wants updates on what's going on with that side of things. Otherwise, my Discord is the main community. I moved all of my support and toolbox stuff over to Discord because it's just easier to set up, and you can pop into my server, choose if you're a validator or not, so you can see the stuff if you want to or not. Or just hang out in the general chat for people who have questions on staking, validators, whatever.
Perfect. Website's the easy place to find all your links then.
Yep.
Awesome. I'm going to link that in the description of the video. So anybody wants to check out all Patrick's stuff, his guides, the software for installing the validator, find all his links to Discord, Twitter, all that stuff, Telegram. Be sure to check this out. So thanks, Patrick. Thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like and subscribe, and until next time, thanks everyone.